I think there are a number of issues where the Iranian administration and the US officials need to find a common agreement. And that is why there's this ongoing struggle to get a framework developed and signed, which covers the following issues. First, of course, the Strait of Hormuz, where the US ends the blockade and Iran also ends allows the transit to continue as it was before the war, because Iran has been using that as the biggest strategic weapon it has. And it has partly worked as well, because there's no military solution to that, even if the US tries very hard. And then, of course, the second one is the nuclear issue. What is to be done with Iran's enrichment program? And more specifically, whatever uranium has been enriched so far, how is it to be monitored and managed and kept where? So there are multiple proposals. Some say it should be taken to Russia, some say it should come to Pakistan, or it should be under international scrutiny, etc., etc. So some of those options are on the table, and no agreement has been made yet on that. Then, of course, comes the Hezbollah, Hamas, and other proxies, quote unquote, of Iran, which the US and Israel want to be completely eliminated or damaged. And Iran has been very reluctant to give any kind of commitment on that, because these are Iran's assets. And finally, if I may add, the the importance of Lebanon, because if you remember when the talks started, Lebanon was a question that Iran raised and put as a precondition for talks, and then the US did manage Israeli and Lebanese ceasefire. And even though some of Lebanon's territories with Israel now, but there is the hostilities have subsided, and there's a ceasefire in place. So all of these issues would have to be put together, but there's a top issue in my view, which is about Iran's need for a guarantee or assurance that it won't be attacked again, about its security. Iran does not want a short term solution. It says that, the US should guarantee and assure that it is not going to attack Iran again, or its proxy or ally. Israel will not do that again. And that is, of course, a difficult one, because, I mean, would US give that? And even if Trump gives a guarantee, who knows that Trump may just undo that. So some other power may have to step in, like China, for example. And that's what a lot of people have been saying, that why doesn't China enter and become a guarantor or something like that? So all of this is on the table at the moment. And there are parleys going on. Arakshi was in Oman and then Russia, and might come back to Pakistan. And all these points apparently were discussed, but more specifically, the nuclear issue was discussed while in Pakistan, as far as my reports go. I think, first of all, there are two things to be remembered. One is that Pakistan is a trusted, mediator, both by the United States and by Iran. Of course, when we say trusted, we don't say that there's blind devotion or blind trust for Pakistan. It always comes with the caveats and conditions, etc. But the fact of the matter is that everyone knows that Pakistan is playing an honest broker's role, because Pakistan itself is really affected by this conflict. People, even in Pakistan, people totally forget that, it is in Pakistan's self-interest and national interest to play this role as actively and in a hectic manner as the Field Marshal and Prime Minister have been playing. Because look at the economic cost, look at the security threats, look at if Iran actually collapses and a pro-Israel government is installed in Iran, Pakistan's security, it will be compromised for a long, long time to come. So, and then the Shia Sunni divide in Pakistan, the sectarian fault line, and not to forget the issue of Balochistan. So, which is again any for further unrest in Iran can fuel the Baloch insurgency. So this is the reason that we have a, Pakistan's self-interest, and the other important thing to remember is that Pakistan is the only country which enjoys the trust of Iran and the US, as I mentioned, but of the Gulf countries, including Saudi Arabia, including Qatar, UAE to a great extent, and China, right? So China is the other emerging power. Now, there are very few countries in the world who can claim such support or engagement overall. So I guess that is the reason that Pakistan will play this role. And I am extremely optimistic that Pakistan will, contribute to this peace effort. And the peace is a necessity now, because not because you and I want it. Of course, we always argue for peace, but it's the United States which needs an off ramp. Trump wants to get out of it. And Iran also wants to get out of it. There's too much damage has been done for Iran. So both parties, that's why there's a ceasefire. That's why it was extended. That, now the issue is how do they sell this to their domestic audience, to the domestic politics without incurring a political damage, because Trump is going to be damaged for the midterm elections. And Iranian hardliners within the government and society are going to question the peacemakers. So this deal or framework has to be give some measure of win to both sides, and that's what negotiations are all about. As you know, that the blockade of Strait of Hormuz, first by Iran and now by the US, blockade of the blockade, if I may say that. That is already hurting global economy. It is hurting everyone. And it is also hurting the GCC countries because their oil trade has gone down substantially. And if this continues, they will incur further economic losses and there will be global disruptions and shortages. Even now, they're saying that the 20% reduction every day in the oil supply and gas supply, LNG supply, is going to be recovered in a year's time. The prices won't come up. The supply won't meet because already you have for 2 months now a big deficit going on. So that's the first. That's why the Gulf countries will be under immense pressure. That is the tool Iran has. But then Iran has direct uh, capability to attack the installations within the Gulf countries. So, as proxies or as allies of the United States, that will resume. You saw what happened in UAE, the scare and the capital flight, and people leaving UAE and Dubai, and Qatar, suffering again, Kuwait. All of this is within the axis of Iranian missiles, and it has adequate number of missiles. And I'm sure in the latest ceasefire round, it has continued the production under its in its underground production facilities. And the third is, of course, the attacks on Israel itself. We know that Israel has been intercepting Iranian missiles, about 80% of them. But the 20% have caused enough damage in smaller towns in Iran. Some footage has come out, but there's been a big information blackout from Israel, which does not really tell us the extent of damage. So that's the third thing that Iran will do or can do. And of course, let us not forget that whatever Iran does, the US military might is going to cause further huge havoc on Iran's infrastructure. And God forbid if its energy supplies and its energy assets are attacked, that would be a huge, huge blow, not just to Iran, but also to world's energy supplies and to China, which also, as you know, is a big importer of Iranian oil. And China has already given a very clear message that, do not touch our supplies because then we will, we can retaliate as well. So these are the consequences that may occur. So the ceasefire could very much, first of all, there is a delay and a breakdown of the back channel diplomacy, which Pakistan is leading and Pakistan is enabling. It is playing the role of messenger, mediator, facilitator, all things, and the role has increased by the day. Even some of us have been surprised by Pakistan's, effective role in getting these parties, warring parties together. Now, first is that there's a breakdown. Both the US says, no way, we're not going for that. The chances of which are very, very remote because the United States just cannot resume this war. So that's one. Second, Israel's sabotage. That has been a fear from the very start of the peace process because obviously the objectives of Israel and the United States now differ and vary substantially. Of course, the US is a bigger power and it is prevailing, but Israel does not want the ceasefire to continue. Israel wants the war to continue, weakening Iran more and more and more until the Iranian government falls or Iranian state also collapses and there is anarchy or civil war and Iran can be divided into smaller zones or even a physical division of Iran is possible. Now, all of this is, I'm not speculating because these are some of the official documents that you read from the Israeli side over the years, the kind of ambitious ideas or plans that they have been formulating for Iran, which is the biggest threat for them in their worldview in the Middle East and West Asia. So that's the second sabotage. The third is that the Iranian hardliners within the country dominate the discussion and say no more negotiations and let them come and kill us and let us be martyrs in the cause of nationalism, in the cause of Iranian future autonomy or whatever they label it. So these are the three likely scenarios where hostilities will resume, ceasefire would end. Now, I think all three are unlikely and there's less chance. Of course, there's always a chance there. The second one about Israel is perhaps the most potent threat, but thus far, Trump and the US have impressed upon Israel, and I think Israel also needs a break because it is also running out of supplies, as we knew from reports earlier of its missile stockpile and drones, etc. So it might also need some time to recuperate. Pakistan is keeping that channel open, and as we speak, I'm sure that there are parleys going on between Arakshi and Pakistan's leadership. Of course, it's been termed and framed as a bilateral engagement, largely for Iranian audience, and also not to boost expectations from this brief visit. Whatever discussion will go on in Islamabad will be relayed to the United States for the preparation of round two, if and when that happens. Now, the thing is, as we know, there have been setbacks, but thus far, none of the parties have expressed a lack of trust in Pakistan. The US has not done that. Iranian officials have not done that. Of course, Iranian media and some other individuals associated with the regime, Iranian regime, have made some comments about Pakistan, and all of that happens because uh, countries engaged in such high stakes negotiations also do lots of posturing in the public and largely for their domestic audience. They have to also keep on telling that because Iranian government cannot show its weakness. If it does, you remember that already people had come out on the streets against it before this war in thousands, and there was a brutal crackdown on people. I mean, even by Iranian official estimates, more than 1,000 people were killed in those. Of course, the non-official estimates say 20,000, 30,000, or even more. So this government was already facing lots of public pressure in terms of cost of living, inflation, corruption, etc. And because of the war, they all rallied around the government and the flag, and they said, "We are not going to harm our government in the coming weeks and months." But if Iranian government shows its weakness, if it shows as somewhat compromising, its hardcore support would wane, and thereby creating, because remember there's a very active Mossad network in Iran as well. We had read about these conspiracy theories about how effective Mossad is, but now we have actually seen how effective it is, and it plays out. So that regime itself can face a lot of pressure. Similarly, in the United States, if Trump is seen to be backtracking a lot without some measure of of victory, military victory or diplomatic victory, Trump will be cooked in the midterm elections. His ratings are already at the lowest, and the Republican Party is afraid that if this continues, if the economic pressure, inflation continues to rise, then in the midterms in November, the Republicans will lose both the Congress and the Senate, which is going to turn President Trump into a lame duck president, not being able to legislate, and he could very well face another impeachment move. And these are very, very complicated, high stakes consequences. So, therefore, what I'm trying to lay out this scenario is that the safest option for Trump is to find a way out to end this war and declare some sort of victory in what language and in what package. And Pakistan is assisting Trump's favorite field marshal is assisting, and the great guy, Sharif, are assisting Trump to get out of this problem. And the Iranians also are looking up to Pakistan, that that Pakistan can help impress the United States and make them agree to some of the demands by the Iranians, because they also need an off ramp and face saving. The realistic breakthrough is that Strait of Hormuz is open for everyone. The Iranians allow shipments to pass, and the US ends the naval blockade. It's number one, that is the most important thing as we speak. Number two, there is an agreement on capping the nuclear program for 5 years or 10 years by Iran, and there is some sort of international scrutiny or supervision put into place there. Number three, the US says we are going to respect Iran's territorial sovereignty and its security, and we will not attack Iran again. Number four is that the sanctions on Iran are lifted. That is another big item under consideration. At the start, I should have said that. But sanctions are a big, big hurdle. Iran also wants reparations, and the cost. I don't think that the US would give that. But if Iran charges, a fee on at the Strait of Hormuz, then it can recover some of that money and put it for rebuilding the damaged infrastructure. So overall, these are the 4 or 5 things that would be in a robust framework agreement, and in which the US can claim we got the Strait of Hormuz opened up, we capped Iran's nuclear program, we have won. And Iran will say we are getting sanctions lifted and we are getting reparations to its domestic audience, especially the hardline Islamist cadres that are the key support base of the regime.